I've been teaching a small class at the local church on the topic of mystical non-dualism or non-dualistic consciousness. And one of the participants was asking, what does non-dual consciousness look like? What does it feel like? And to try to answer her query, I looked at many YouTube videos, and there are a lot of them, with either talks by or interviews with people who have either had a glimpse of non-dualism or who may be claiming to experience it in a pretty ongoing way. I'll mention 3 sites, by the way, that I think have good content in this regard. One is Science and Non-Dualism, and I believe that's what it's called, and it's a great site with a lot of talks on consciousness and various aspects of non-dualism that interface with Buddhism. Another is Buddha at the Gas Pump, in which the moderator interviews a variety of people whom he characterizes as being awakening beings, which is a kind of a neat term that in some ways characterizes the definition of a bodhisattva. And then finally there's a site called Conscious TV, and I'll put links to these sites, to these YouTube channels down below, so that you can review them. But in the Conscious TV channel, either one or the other of a married couple interviews various people and really asks them questions pertaining to from their childhood on up, as far as what their experiences have been and how they experience and view and conceptualize, if conceptualize is a way to think about it, their non-dual kinds of experiences. And it was on that last site, Conscious TV, that I came across an interview. There were 4 parts of it with a woman. I believe her name was Catherine Noyce. And I plan to play the first of those 4 segments for my class this evening. It's about 8 minutes long, and I'll put links to her interview down below in particular. And I'm going to play, actually, on this video, the first of those 4 segments. What I like about this particular video is that she says that this is the first time she's ever talked about her experience, and I believe it. And the other thing is she has not connected her experience with any particular religious or spiritual tradition, which many people have done, including myself, vis-a-vis the Mahayana Buddhist tradition. Nor has she taken it so far as to claim to be a great teacher or to take it to the extreme of what almost could be characterized as a nihilistic kind of approach of, defining self and everything as total illusion, which in some ways may lose the point that non-dualistic means neither dual nor non-dual. So anyway, here's the snippet that I think might be enlightening in some ways, to give people a sense of what that experience can be like. By the way, I make no claim to have such an experience at this time. But I have gotten glimpses in the past, and again, my tendency has been to want to link those to a traditional spiritual kind of lineage, and for me that's the Mahayana Buddhist lineage, evolving ultimately into the the Pure Land faith-oriented approach that I've talked about so much on these videos.
Hello and welcome to Conscious TV. My name is Renate McNay, and our guest today is Catherine Noyce. Hello, Catherine.
Hello, Renate.
And we are going to have a chat about non-duality. Catherine lives in a non-dual space, and we are going to ask her how that is. Okay, Catherine, so could you tell us how it happened to you that you live in one of the most desirable places there is? You can call it nirvana or non-duality. How did it happen?
Well, I'd have to start by saying it didn't happen to me.
Okay.
Because nirvana, or whatever that state is, doesn't happen to a person. So I could state a series of events that appeared to lead up to something,
Yes.
but it's not strictly linear. I think what we'll probably find during this talk that almost everything I say will be paradoxical. So, where can I start? I'll tell you what happened, what
Okay.
seemed to happen.
Yes.
That I was sitting down listening to someone talking about non-duality,
Yes.
and I was listening in a fairly relaxed sort of way, but listening but not concentrating. And when I got up, I left something behind. And I got up and went out of the room, and there was a very strange feeling. And it's very misleading, but I have to say there was a lot of light, but do not be misled by the light, please. And I realised that the thing that called itself Catherine had gone right to the back somewhere, and something else had come forward. And the Catherine thing, whatever it was, and we can talk about what is a person and what made Catherine Catherine, or what makes Renate herself, we could talk about that. But somehow it wasn't there in the same way, and it's never come back.
So what you say is Catherine completely disappeared? Or are there times in your life where Catherine is present?
Well, there's another paradox.
Yes.
There's certainly a consciousness of the Catherine thing. I retain most of the Catherine-like attributes, like a sense of humour, and I don't like some things and I do like others.
Yes.
I once came up with a simile, which is saying it's a bit like a web, but without the spider. There's nothing that sort of attaches to the Catherine.
So are there times when Catherine can have emotions or something painful going on? And what you say is you're basically observing that, and there's nothing, neither pain or whatever is going on, can pull consciousness back into Catherine.
Oh, I think it's probably a thing about terminology. Now, let's think. Let's take pain or fear or gladness or whatever
Yes.
you like to call it.
Yes.
Those things certainly go on.
Yes.
There's certainly pain and joy and boredom
Yes.
and hunger. And sometimes they're even stronger than they used to be in some ways, because my husband pointed out, he said it's like you haven't got filters in place that we used to have. So those things go on, and they go on in a very Catherine-like way. But somehow the thing that called itself Catherine isn't there. But there's no real change to the way I've behaved or the way things are seen. It's very mysterious.
So where are you? Or who are you?
Who am I? Are we going to do self-inquiry this
No,
afternoon?
it's just if you're not Catherine,
Who am I?
yes.
Okay.
What is there? How do you experience yourself?
I don't experience myself. There's something going on.
Yeah.
What there is something that is everything, that is all there is. It's everything that we can see and we can't see. And somehow somehow this is experienced, mediated through the senses. But really, there's this vastness. And you can't even call it vastness, because if you call something vast, it implies limitation.
Right.
If you call it empty, it's also completely full. It's buzzing with energy, and yet it's completely still. And somehow, at the same time, and not separate from that, there's something Catherine-like going on. There's, how can I put it?
So if somebody calls you Catherine, you know, you don't see a person and all of a sudden somebody sees you on the other side of the street and says, Catherine, you respond.
I certainly would. And if they had a bottle of brandy, I'd go even faster.
So that means, does
Yeah.
that indicate that there is still a sense of self? Because if there wouldn't be a sense of self in the fastness, how would you respond?
Well, that's a very interesting point. And that's what people always say when they're not quite sure how to answer a question, because it gives them time to respond. But what
Okay.
I would say is that all the ordinary stuff just goes on. Life is no different in a way. I do all the same things, more or less, or all the same things are done. So if someone calls my name, I go over. Or if I owe them money, I run in the other direction.
Right.
None of that changes. This is why it's so paradoxical. And you sort of need to bear in mind that I'm just an ordinary person, so to speak. I'm not a teacher.
Yes.
And I've never spoken in public before
Yes.
about this. So I'm sort of teasing out stuff as we go along.